Late one evening, Ethan was studying alone in the town library when an old book suddenly fell from a dusty shelf. Hidden inside was a yellow train ticket. The date printed on it was tomorrow, yet the paper looked over 50 years old. Confused, Ethan turned it over and found a message written in faded ink. Board the train at midnight. Come alone. He laughed nervously and slipped the ticket into his pocket, unaware that someone was watching him from the shadows. Just before midnight, a loud train whistle echoed outside Ethan's window. He ran outside and froze. A black train stood at the end of the street, surrounded by thick fog. There were no tracks beneath it. Its doors slowly opened by themselves. Ethan stepped closer and looked inside. The passengers seemed normal at first until he noticed something terrifying. None of them had shadows. Then one passenger slowly turned, smiled, and whispered, "We've been waiting for you, Ethan." Ethan's heart pounded as he stared at the smiling passenger. The train doors slammed shut behind him. Startled, he turned and tried to leave, but the train had already begun moving. Outside the windows, the town disappeared into a sea of darkness. The passengers sat silently, staring straight ahead. None of them blinked. Then Ethan noticed something terrifying. Every passenger was holding the same yellow ticket he had found in the library. Suddenly, one of them slowly stood up. The passenger walked toward Ethan with slow, uneven steps. His face looked pale and lifeless. "What is this place?" Ethan asked nervously. The man raised a trembling hand and pointed toward the last carriage. "Don't let the conductor see you," he whispered. Before Ethan could ask why, the lights flickered. A tall figure appeared at the far end of the train. He wore a black uniform and carried an old lantern. Then the conductor slowly turned his head and looked directly at Ethan. The conductor's dark eyes locked onto Ethan. The train suddenly fell silent. Every passenger lowered their heads. "Ticket," the conductor said in a cold voice. Ethan nervously handed him the yellow ticket. The conductor examined it and froze. For the first time, fear appeared on his face. Without a word, he returned the ticket and quickly walked away. The passengers began whispering. Ethan caught only one sentence. "He has the forbidden ticket." Confused, Ethan followed the conductor to the last carriage. The doors slowly creaked open. Inside was a room filled with old photographs. Every photo showed missing people from different years. Some pictures were over a century old. Then Ethan found one that made his blood run cold. It was a photograph of himself standing beside the train. The picture was dated 10 years in the future. Suddenly, a voice whispered behind him, "You were never supposed to see that." Ethan dropped the photograph and stepped back in horror. His own face stared back at him from the picture. The date below read 10 years in the future. Suddenly the train lights flickered. The photograph changed. Ethan watched as a dark shadow slowly appeared behind his future self. Before he could react, the picture burst into flames. The voice returned from the darkness. "The train doesn't show the future," it whispered. "It shows your fate." The carriage door slammed shut. Ethan spun around and saw an old woman sitting alone at the end of the room. He was certain she hadn't been there before. "You're in danger," she said quietly. "The conductor isn't the one you should fear." She handed Ethan a torn newspaper. The headline made his heart stop. It read, "Local boy vanishes without a trace." Beneath the headline was his photograph. The article was dated tomorrow. Then the train suddenly entered a long, dark tunnel. Ethan stared at the newspaper in disbelief. The date was tomorrow, yet it already reported his disappearance. Suddenly, the train entered a dark tunnel and every light went out. When they returned, the passengers were gone. Every seat was empty. Ethan was now alone. Then he noticed footprints appearing on the floor by themselves, as if an invisible person was walking through the carriage. The footprints stopped at a locked door marked with the number 13. With shaking hands, Ethan opened the door. Inside was a small compartment filled with old clocks. Every clock showed a different year. In the center stood a large black clock counting backward. As Ethan stepped closer, he saw names carved into its surface. Missing people. Then he found his own name. Suddenly the clock stopped. A loud scream echoed through the train. Behind him, a voice whispered, "You're next." Ethan slowly turned around and froze. Ethan slowly turned around, but nobody was there. The whisper echoed again. "You're next." Suddenly, every clock in the room began ticking at once. The black clock started glowing red. Ethan noticed a small key hanging from its hands. As he reached for it, the wall behind the clock cracked open. Hidden inside was a secret passage. Strange whispers drifted from the darkness. Then Ethan heard a familiar voice. "Help me." It sounded exactly like his own voice. Gathering his courage, Ethan entered the passage. At the end stood a locked iron gate. Behind it were dozens of people trapped in shadowy cells. Some looked frightened, others looked completely lost. Then Ethan spotted someone he recognized. It was the passenger who had first warned him about the conductor. "You have to escape before the train reaches its final station," the man shouted. Suddenly, the ground shook. A loud whistle echoed through the train. The final station was approaching. The train slowly emerged from the darkness. Outside the windows was a ghostly city covered in fog. Not a single light was visible. The passengers suddenly reappeared in their seats. Every one of them stared silently outside. The conductor walked through the carriage and announced "Final Station." The doors opened with a loud creak. Ethan looked out and froze. Hundreds of shadow figures stood waiting on the platform. None of them had faces. The conductor approached Ethan and held out his hand. "Give me the ticket," he demanded. Ethan finally noticed something written on the back. "Only one passenger may leave." The shadow figures began moving toward the train. Panic spread through the carriage. Then the old woman appeared again. "The ticket chooses who escapes," she whispered. Ethan looked around at the trapped passengers and made a choice. As he handed the ticket away, the train began shaking violently. The train shook violently as Ethan stared at the ticket in his hand. The shadow figures were getting closer. The old woman pointed toward the passengers. "Only one person can leave," she said. Ethan looked around at the frightened faces. Then his eyes fell on the man who had warned him about the conductor. The man smiled sadly. "I've been trapped here for 30 years, he whispered. "Save yourself." But Ethan couldn't ignore the feeling that something about the ticket was still hidden. Ethan flipped the ticket over one last time. New words slowly appeared on the paper. The choice is not who leaves, the choice is who stays. Suddenly, the train lights exploded. The conductor's calm expression vanished. For the first time, he looked afraid. "No!" he shouted. The old woman smiled. "Now you understand." Ethan realized the conductor needed a passenger to remain trapped forever. Then the shadow figures rushed toward the train, and the doors burst open. As the shadow figures rushed toward the train, the old woman revealed the truth. "This train was never built to carry passengers," she said. "It was built to imprison the Shadow Keeper." Ethan looked at the conductor in shock. The conductor lowered his head. "I was the first passenger," he admitted. "Many years ago, I made a deal to escape. In return, I became the train's guardian." Suddenly, the ground beneath the station cracked open, and a terrifying roar echoed from below. Dark smoke poured from the cracks as a massive shadow rose into the sky. Its glowing eyes locked onto Ethan. The Shadow Keeper had finally awakened. The conductor stepped forward and handed Ethan a small silver watch. "This can end everything," he said, "but only if you're willing to sacrifice the train forever." The old woman nodded. "Once the watch stops, the train, the station, and everyone trapped here will disappear." Ethan looked at the watch as the creature moved closer. watch as the Shadowkeeper towered above the station. The creature's glowing eyes burned through the darkness. Around him, the trapped passengers waited in silence. "If the watch stops, everything ends," the conductor warned. Ethan looked at the frightened faces and knew there was no other choice. He slowly opened the watch. Inside was a photograph of a young boy. It was the conductor. Then Ethan understood. The conductor had been trapped for over a century. The Shadowkeeper lunged forward as Ethan gripped the silver watch. With trembling hands, he stopped its ticking. Instantly, a blinding light filled the station. The train began breaking apart into thousands of glowing particles. One by one, the trapped passengers vanished, finally free. The conductor smiled for the first time in years. "Thank you," he whispered. The Shadowkeeper screamed before disappearing forever. Ethan opened his eyes in the library. The train was gone.